So here we are at Mountain Cloud, Thursday night. Welcome to everyone here in the Zendo, this mountain Zendo, and to everyone who's joining us on the cloud. So grateful to be here all together. Welcome. Some of you know that Scott and I have just returned from this annual Sambo Zen teacher training, or Kenshukai, that was in Madrid this year. And we were there with Henry. It was quite an occasion. This year I was invited to give, as was Scott, one of the teisho for the teachers, for our Dharma brothers and sisters, for Ryon Roshi and the other masters. So tonight I'd like to offer something of that talk that I just gave with some different nuances and, if time, a few other points. I prefaced the talk with a story that I feel certain at some point along the way I've told at Mountain Cloud, but it surfaced again in a fresh way, perhaps being there because Bruce Harris, this Sambo Zen Roshi, who figures in this story, was there with us for just one night. So a few years before the pandemic put a pause on all of our public gatherings, I was standing in Sanun Zendo's beautiful old Zendo in Kamakura, kind of home base for Sambo Zen. And I was just in there after the session had ended. All of the zabuton, the mats, the cushions were cleared away. And Bruce and I were standing there just kind of absorbing this atmosphere. And over the altar in the Zendo is this calligraphy just hanging down, quite old, and it's framed. Just standing there gazing at the altar, I said, "What does that mean?" Bruce spent almost 2 decades in Japan. He's pretty fluent in Japanese. And he looked at it and he said, "Fearless humility." And I was struck. Humility. Things as they are. Nothing extra, nothing in the way, nothing to defend. A line from Yamada Konroshi's death poem came to mind. He wrote, "My eyes don't talk." Fearless humility. For the next year, that phrase kind of hung over the altar of my sitting. I took it in, shared it, taught from it. I taught from it here. And then a year later, again, after a session with Ryon Roshi, I had the chance to ask him, "Roshi, you know that calligraphy in the Zendo hanging over the altar?" And he said, "Oh yes, very old. Harada Roshi did that." "Roshi, what does it mean?" And he pictured it in his mind's eye, these 3 characters, and said, "Fearless giving. Giving no fear." That's what this practice does. giving no fear. The phrase resonates with that turning line in the Heart Sutra. No hindrance of mind, therefore no fear. What about when no hindrance includes the death and destruction in Ukraine, the rapidly warming planet, extreme political divisions? This fearless heart includes everything. One body, wherever you turn, your own true face. The one who chants the Heart Sutra, the litany of gone, 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 is the Bodhisattva of great compassion, seer of the cries of the world, seeing, responding without the slightest gap, no space for a hyphen. Like Dogen says about this practice realization, one reality, one manifesting, one maintaining. At this Kenshukai, we heard the name of Dogen over and over again. It was wonderful. For Dogen, this practice of Zazen is absolutely primary. It's the greatest opportunity we have as human beings to discover and express our humanity, who we truly are. So we offer our wholehearted sitting. But what's really going on here? The whole universe is sitting us. Just one sitting. So as many of you know, Scott and I have been on the move. In June, we put our house in Dallas on the market. Then we came to Mountain Cloud for the summer session. The day after the session, the realtor called with an offer on the house. So we drove back to Dallas, dove into organizing, clearing away, divesting of things. A week later, sold the house, packed, drove back to Santa Fe to settle into a lovely little rental house here. And the unpacking continues. In all of the activity, an aspect of the Dharma has kept showing itself, carrying this here, that there, large box, small box, meeting with the movers, meeting with students online. The equality and equanimity of things just as they are. I know this is true, but it was still surprising how whole each thing is, including our exhaustion at the end of the day. This is one of the virtues of the Dharma. We may cultivate it, being equanimous in the face of change. But really, it's a characteristic of this world that we're embodying and exploring right here. So during this whole period of transition, a koan kept coming up. It's Denkoroku, or the transmission of light, number 29. This is Eka, or Huike, his transmission experience with Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is number 28. That's assuming that Shakyamuni Buddha is 0, the head chapter, 0. Eka sees and shares the world that Bodhidharma called vast and void, no holiness. Boundless clarity, nothing separate. So I'd like to read the case. This is by, a case collected by Master Kazan, who compiled this and wrote background to each case, gave a teisho on each case and a verse to each case when he was 33 years old. So case 29. The 29th ancestor, Daiso Daishi, it's Eka or Huike, attended on the 28th ancestor. One day he said to the ancestor, to Bodhidharma, all relations have come to an end for me. The ancestor said, doesn't it mean all has simply become extinct? The master said, this is Eka, it has not simply become extinct. And the ancestor, Bodhidharma, said, what proof is there for it? Eka said, with absolute clarity, I always know. Therefore, no word can reach it. The ancestor said, that is precisely the essence of the mind, which all Buddhas have realized. Don't doubt this anymore. That's the case. And here's Kazan's verse. Empty and clear, all thoughts of worldly relations are exhausted in all clarity and lucidity, always so open and bright. There was another translation of that line, in all clarity, always infinitely open. Eka's case is complete and precise, beautiful and true. It's also lofty. At one point in this Kenshukai, Roshi's talking about how Dogen actually is so critical of these great masters, very selective. And the Roshi says, but we're down here looking up at those mountain peaks and Dogen's up there, oh, lower, higher. When I turned to this case, it seemed so high. Not just the scene, the mountains, but the clarity and depth. As the case says, no word can reach it. And yet, our practice invites us to venture into this territory, trusting that Eka's world is exactly this world right now. Intimate, immediate, actually nowhere but here. From the beginning in his story, Eka is associated with light. So perfect, this transmission of light. Kazan gives all these details about this illumination and his background to the case, how this light figures in as it play in Eka's life. And then Kazan tells the story that most good Zen students know. Scratch the good. Many of us know this, that story from Gateless Gate, Lumon number 41, where Eka comes to Bodhidharma and stands outside his cave or his room. He's standing there in the snow. Some versions say all night, some say longer. And Bodhidharma won't turn, won't acknowledge him. And finally, the story goes, Eka cuts off his arm and offers it, maybe throws it in. And then comes his plea. They now are face to face. And Eka says, I beg you, Master, have mercy on all beings and teach me. As far as I know, this is the only master who asks in this way. Desperately seeking himself, Eka is. But he knows his awakening is inseparable from the awakening of all beings. In your compassion, save all beings by teaching me. Save me. Show me my wholeness, and the entire world will be implicated in it. This one wholeness. When Bodhidharma turns to Eka, he asks, what do you want? And Eka says, my mind is not at rest. I beg you, Master, give it rest. I'm suffering, struggling, lost, divided from myself. Put it to rest. Please grant me peace. Bodhidharma says, bring me your mind. Eka searches and searches for his restless mind and cannot find. So 8 years later, according to Kazan, 8 years of practicing with Bodhidharma, sitting, attending, trying to see and convey this real world. And comes this scene. Eka and Bodhidharma are out walking in the mountains. Eka knows the terrain. He's been walking those paths. Bodhidharma asks, which way shall we go? And Eka says, go straight on, straight ahead. Bodhidharma says, if you go straight ahead, you cannot move a step. Eka must have been quite ripe, but that's the turning word. That's it. He's gone. Whatever thread of an idea might have remained, it's severed, cut. Never was there. Never was there. Whatever trace of separation, this I, me, mine, just dissolved, vanished. He says, all relations have come to an end for me. No this and that, inside, outside, I or other, no possibility of near or far, all relations ceased. All grasping fallen away, nothing to grasp. This one entirety, and each bit of it is all of it. Dogen has a quote that just speaks to this. He wrote, no creature ever falls short of its own completeness. Wherever it stands, it does not fail to cover the ground. Eka saw this. The relative world collapsed into one over zero. One of the great joys of meeting with students is sharing their experiences, the whole gamut. One student, I guess late last spring, the morning that we were to meet, well, there's a little backstory. There were two ducks. This pair of ducks had not long before taken up residence on their porch. It's sort of a back porch. And maybe about 8 blocks away, there was a duck pond, and they just found their way and made themselves at home. And this morning that we're about to meet, she's sitting there and just looks out the window, and suddenly there's just duck. Duck. The student said, I'm not in relation to anything. Later on, that same student wrote, I have no qualities. Another student who had been really struggling with a sense of guilt and long time, just heard a sound, deep into this practice, just one sound. And suddenly that whole story just fell. Who's feeling this? Who's guilty? What I? What story? That student wrote this email. I'm so amazed, students for whom English is not a first language. use the words immediacy. Everything has space, even when one, all together. And finally, there is no confusion. Some years ago, I was writing my dissertation and still playing concerts as a classical musician. And then in the evening, whenever possible, going to Doksan, my root teacher, Ruben Habito Roshi. We would begin with a koan, and then Ruben might ask, "How are you?" My go-to answer those days was tired. I'm tired. Ruben took it in and said, "Fine. Then let yourself be nothing but tired. Just tired." Completely at rest. No one doing anything. All relations have come to an end for me, says Eka. And Bodhidharma says, doesn't it mean that all has simply become extinct? Is it just vanished? A vacuum, a frozen landscape, this white tundra, this vista, nothing at all. Eka says, no, it has not simply become extinct. And Bodhidharma says, prove it. As I sat with this koan, I was touched by the beauty of Eka's response. Ryon Roshi, working on koans, sometimes asks us, where is the beauty? Eka says, with absolute clarity, I always know. Eka doesn't just disappear. The whole world comes rushing in, illumining his own light, and everything is there. Dogen calls it the true human body, beyond explanation. This one dynamic functioning is a word Dogen uses a lot, this functioning. Words can't touch it, yet here it is. Even in these words, this now, with absolute clarity, I always know. This one clarity. It's what I am. Just looking around, the flowers on the altar, the statue of Buddha, the candle, the trees, the breeze, the clouds. This is your knowing. I always see it so clearly. I am that. Eka is deeply awakened, standing alone, a clear mirror. It's saving to see. this profound, thoroughgoing wholeness. And it matters to see it. But the absolute clarity Eka realizes doesn't depend on how clearly I see it. It simply is so. This one clarity. And what is it? Why is it so touching? This transparent world that issues forth in 10,000 myriad things, and this utter seamless fabric. What is it? As the Heart Sutra says, it's wisdom. Wisdom beyond wisdom. And compassion. Compassion in the sense of nothing set apart, and that anything at all is. Gone, thoroughly gone beyond. And yet, we're sitting here in the Zendo, on the screen. Bodhidharma calls it the essence of mind that all Buddhas, all awakened ones realize. And he says, don't doubt it. This awake world is what you are. Kazan in his verse calls it clearest emptiness and intimately one. All thoughts of worldly relations are exhausted. So intimate. This no near or far, this late daylight, like it's about to rain here maybe, and surely wherever you are. Not extinct. Infinitely open. Open and bright. I mentioned at the start that we were in Kenshukai, and I want to say that the teaching, the sitting with each other, with the Roshi, the guidance in Doksan, it was unparalleled. Ryoun Roshi's Dharma name is surpassing cloud, and it's true. But what impresses me most about the Roshi, some of you have met him, certainly heard him. Most impressive is his humanity. To see this world, this one clarity, and live it. To see and recognize that there's always more. He kept talking about it, this path that's so clear, and how to make my steps follow it. A little over a year ago, I heard Ryoan Roshi give a teisho on Denkoroku 29. And there were 2 points I just want to briefly bring up. They surfaced from his talk all that time ago as I was taking this up. The first one, he quotes Master Keizan. So Keizan writes, once Bodhidharma said, if you abandon all external conditions and there is no more grasping in the internal mind, the mind becomes like a wall made of bricks. Roshi quoted this and said something like, on a practice level, this sounds like an instruction. Abandon all external conditions. Don't be distracted. But, Roshi said, this case is about true abandoning, really being free from, he called it, these dualistic concepts, free from external conditions, not bothered by what's going on, so to speak, externally. It's about discovering, as Eka did, that there's no such thing as external. According to Keizan, Bodhidharma tells Eka, when grasping falls away, your mind becomes like a brick wall. Ryoan Roshi said to Bodhidharma through Eka, as he often does, wrong. Not like a brick wall. Your mind is a brick wall. And then he said, practice like a brick wall. Then you can discover that you are the wall itself. So for us here, it's clay. It's this amazing red clay wall with flecks of golden straw. That body. And then Ryoan Roshi ended his talk, this talk from about a year ago, with what impresses him most about Eka. Not the great awakening, as clear and deep as it is, but the life Eka lives after the seeing in this koan. Once he finds his successor, great story about Sozan, Eka then disappears into the ordinary world, the world of the marketplace. He teaches monks and nuns, lay women and men in all kinds of settings, bars, butcher shops, a storytelling troupe. He's constantly learning these new skills. And as Keizan puts it, he's sort of disguising himself to fit into whatever the circumstance is. So he can just be fully there in the most at-home way. He did this for 30 years. As Keizan puts it, concealing the brilliancy and obliterating the traces of the true human world, the true world. It seems so resonant with Ryoan Roshi. And so innate to us. This clarity And for Eka, the polish just goes. He's simply fully human. Quite an invitation. I have the feeling when we sit that we're sitting in Eka's sitting, in Shakyamuni Buddha's sitting. This true world right here. So at home. Thank you all. Thank you so much for this shared practice in this beautiful place. Thank you.